Let's see how I can. How are you guys doing? Good. Interesting. Well, I'm going to try to finish chapter 4, which really goes over some of the different agencies and how we get social services delivered, places you guys might work in the future. And they even have some associations which advance the purpose of membership and provide member services. There's a few. So some of them are like the Alliance for Children and Families, American Public Human Service Organization, the Association for Community Organization. There is a CASW. I don't think any of you guys are from Canada, but Canadian Association of Social Workers. There's the Child Welfare League. This is one we belong to that like is the best reason why you should get a social work degree from an accredited university like we are right now. So we're actually applying for reaccreditation too. It's called the Council on Social Work Education. So if we're approved by these guys, then that's the one. It qualifies you for a 1-year master's MSW if you get your BSW from here. The next paper is on the International Federation of Social Workers. And then the National Association of Social Workers is also, actually the conference will be next month. Every October and November in Ohio, we have a conference. Sometimes the chair of our department will pay for some of you guys to go up there and get into the conference for free, which is kind of nice. So, urban and rural differences, that's what I kind of wanted to get into. Because usually there is a drastic difference. And any of you guys ever heard of tent cities before? Heard of them or seen a tent city? And this is a new video, so I actually wanted to.
They live in Las Vegas.
Yes, they actually live in like the sewer systems. Because it's like, I don't know if I should say sewer, but like whatever in fact, Las Vegas. I'll go to that one. Although the one with COVID was interesting, because I haven't seen that yet. Well, this is a quick one. So there's tent cities in Vegas, and the reason the sewer systems are cool because it gets up to like 120.
I'm in Vegas, and that's a barricade that they built so that they could reduce the tent city here on Main. A bunch of people are living here. It's Vegas. It's 116 degrees outside.
It's a desert.
I don't know how they do it. It's extremely hot. I just met my friend Ray. Ray talked to me, soon to be on InvisiblePeople.tv. Great man. And a lot of great people here. A lot of them didn't want to talk. The media has come through here, as usual, again, and they feel their story, if they tell it, it's not going to do any good. Several of them are out. Not everybody's here right now because they're trying to find someplace cool, or they're just relaxing inside their tent city. This is America, and it's up and down Main Street here, and all over, as Ray just said. It's all over America.
So it does get cool there at night because it's a desert, but it's still hard to survive in weather like that. There's definitely some challenges. I haven't seen this one about COVID, but there's been a few new reports because somebody thought COVID would really take off in these tent cities, like all over the place. And I don't know maybe the video's at the bottom. And it looks like it kind of did, and it also kind of didn't. So let's see here. LA has been kind of the worst. Because again, it's a beach town, and there's a lot of folks that have struggled with it. Charlotte, it says, there was an actual movie on YouTube, and that's more of it looks like a skateboarding movie, but this may be the one I was looking for on Reuters. So LA during COVID, you thought this was
Ohio homeowners. If you have a power meter like this on the side of your house, you can qualify to
for solar.
Venice Beach in Los Angeles is known for its relaxed, tolerant lifestyle. There were once a few people living in tents along the city's famous boardwalk. However, the pandemic fueled the rise of Americans without housing. Now, the tents are a city of their own, just one example of a growing displaced population in Los Angeles. City authorities eased rules and allowed people to sleep along the beachfront, while officials worried that dispersing communities would spread COVID-19. Kennard Durr works as a vendor on Venice Beach and was once without housing himself. He says he's never seen the issue balloon like this in 3 decades of being there.
When COVID hit, it was a whole different ballgame. It got me like 10 times the amount of homeless people. There had never been homeless on the hill, on the grass, to the point that locals like, hey, what's going on?
With an influx of people migrating to the beach, conditions have grown worse. Venice officials looked to another LA neighborhood, Echo Park, for solutions. Last month, a city initiative offered shelter to a nearly 200-person encampment there. Virtually all of them accepted. But those who declined faced a removal operation, with police officers clearing structures and tents, despite protesters flooding Echo Park to stop them. Venice City Councilman Mike Bonin says the focus should be on finding housing, not police action.
Let's work on getting the damn housing and get people housed. If you are talking about hundreds of police officers in riot gear coming and taking over a neighborhood, arresting people, and closing off a major public park in the city of Los Angeles, then no, I'm not good for that.
Not everyone agrees. Mark Rayavik is a Venice Beach activist and advisor who believes Echo Park should be a model.
Why are they not doing it here and bringing this park back to public use and helping all of these people? We have assaults and fires and some deaths out here routinely. They all need that help, and the public would like this back. It should never have been allowed to slide and get into this terrible condition.
The question remains how Los Angeles can relocate tens of thousands of people without trampling their rights. On Monday, LA Mayor Eric Garcetti proposed one step, a nearly $1 billion budget to provide beds for those who need them.
So that's
What would you like the power to do at Vegas?
LA, you saw Las Vegas, and that's some of the struggles. So as social services are working, usually we would get those in the urban and rural differences. So the urban places, some ways to fund the solution is like grants. Sometimes we have community funds. You guys saw the COVID funds that have come out. So the money printing, there's endowment. If you do case management with a homeless person, you could have fees for services, or even if they have insurance somehow, insurance reimbursement, and then purchase of service contracts. Some issues with funding, though, could be privatization or competition for funding among agencies. Sometimes there's too many agencies giving services. I don't know if that's been the case as much recently, as a lot of people need them. Protection of agencies' self-interest or agency turfism. So we had that when I worked at Ohio Mentor. We had another agency show up and try to kind of take over the clientele we were seeing, and we just tried to work with them. Some of the other things. So as social work professionals, you guys get a license. So with your bachelor's from here, senior year, you guys can take a licensure exam. So they'll have you sit, if you want to get your social work license, it's state by state. It's the same test, but you would talk to the licensing board from whatever state you want to get your license and practice in. And that's kind of how they regulate it. So there's state licensing and registration, and even legal regulation. The paper that you have due next week is about, like the NASW Code of Ethics, and that's one way. If people aren't following the Code of Ethics, you can lose your license. Let's see here. There's also some paraprofessionals. So this is an interesting scoop, because if you call yourself a social worker, you're supposed to have a social work license. And it's actually a legal term. When you apply for your license, they ask, have you ever called yourself a social worker? You should say no, because you're not supposed to call yourself a social worker without a social worker license. But some, like social service agencies, will use it as a generic term. It'll be their entry-level positions that augment professional services, like child protective services usually. Now, volunteer, that's different, but volunteers can help a lot with policy making or administrative, even advocacy things like advocating for the homeless, and sometimes direct service, like transporting the homeless to places where they have housing. Then there is self-help groups. Anybody ever heard of a self-help group in here? Like Alcoholics Anonymous, that's one of them. Or Al-Anon family groups, or even Cocaine Anonymous. So those are where people actually go and they're not charged, and they ask for a donation. In Cincinnati, we have 700 meetings of AA. It's Alcoholics Anonymous every week. So there's 700 different meetings, which is almost 100 a day, all throughout the day. A lot of us have you guys watch. Used to go and attend an AA meeting, but during COVID, you could go to them online and watch an AA meeting. You go to an open meeting, and they're open to anybody, including students. And then service delivery. This is kind of a new thing that we've been doing, but because of lacking transportation, a lot of us do home visits. So you'll drive to your clients' houses. You'll, have flexibility in how you see them and ways to go help them. Going into local areas, Heroin, Cincinnati. This documentary won a Pulitzer Prize in Cincinnati. And it was really recently, so it's been in the past few days that they've had, they talked about a pandemic. So we had a pandemic, which was local in Cincinnati and all around. And then the epidemic is more, kind of the way that the heroin epidemic has hit us. And it's we've changed the way we've given out social services because of this. This is where we have, like, Lighthouse has gone to reach under the bridges, go into the tent cities, and find folks that have struggled with heroin addiction because of it. But this is an award-winning documentary, and there's a lot of stuff going on. So not just homelessness, not just like food insecurity. As you'll see, a lot of heroin addicts are very, very skinny. Usually you don't eat. Anybody from around here in the Midwest where you've seen the heroin epidemic? No. All right. That's good, though, because this is what it looks like. And this is a Pulitzer Prize winning documentary. It's just like a little bit.
Like the fentanyl, like I know people are putting fentanyl now and fake pills.
Right. Yeah.
And
So fentanyl is another thing that they'll put into heroin to make it stronger. And it could just take, like, it's about a snowflake or like a piece of a sand if you cut that into the heroin. And it was in weed, actually, like a year ago, and some people smoked that.
longer than that. This older man, it was on the news because I live in Macon. He was like 55 years old, so he smokes weed. But his wife doesn't allow him to smoke in the house, so he goes in the garage. So she's wondering, like, okay, he's been out there for a long time. She goes out there, passed out. So when the ambulance pulled up, they had to hit him with the Narcan.
Oh, so they got him back to life?
Yeah, they got him back
Okay.
to life. Then they found out they took the weed. Told him, I got to smoke some weed. So
It was in the
that
weed.
he was smoking and took it, and it was fentanyl in it.
Right. Yeah. So
It was
that's
just weed.
That's kind of some of the struggles. I don't know how to rewind a little, but this is just a half an hour. This will show people getting hit with the Narcan because usually you die first. So your heart stops, you usually stop breathing. So what fentanyl, heroin, other opiates do, and a lot of this is connected to that war in Afghanistan because 98% of the opiates were grown in the poppy plants in Afghanistan. They were kind of thrown in through Mexico and then brought up here in the U.S. Like I said, recently they've been cutting it in the weed. It's usually, in the past, weed was like safe. You smoke it, you're fine, and whatever, and it's legal. But some of the street weed has fentanyl and heroin, and so here's the documentary. I want to get it moving. So we're on time. It's only a half an hour.
Courts will take children from addicted parents. Taxpayers will spend heavily to lock up drug users. People will overdose in gas stations and parks and school parking lots.
So this is all in Cincinnati. It's just about an hour south of here. For sure, Dayton is very similar. A lot of the Midwestern cities, and this links into our sex trade. So we also have, what do they call it? There's a lot of sex trafficking through these Midwestern states because of it's only a 4-hour drive to Canada. You got I-75 to go to Florida, New York, and even like quick out west. What's that? What'd you ask? I didn't hear what you said. I'm sorry. Yeah, there's a discussion. And then there's we had the first paper was due last week in the first discussion. And then which I think you already did that. And then the second paper is next week, and then the discussion. And then signing in. I mean, it is college. You guys could, blow it off and not show up and try to squeak by. I did that my sophomore year, but I got a 0.59 GPA. So I don't know. What's your all's hardest class? Is it still math? Any mathematics?
Yeah, math. And we got undergrad time. They use so much work.
So, and I know these can sometimes, like, your eyes glaze over, but as a social worker, this will hit on every issue that we see as social workers. So this is going to be children taken from you, homelessness, food insecurity, overdoses, addiction recovery, and it's all here local too. So it's a quick half hour if you can give me your half an hour attention. I promise. She's dead.
It's the first day of another week of the heroin epidemic. Over the next 7 days in greater Cincinnati, at least 180 people will overdose. 18 will die. This is normal now. This is a typical week. Here's courtroom A in Untitled County. It's the first stop for those arrested the night before on heroin charges. This morning, as on most, 1 in 4 cases on the docket is directly connected to heroin. They come from wealthy neighborhoods and poor.
She had syringes in her vagina that she did not disclose.
They are young and old, parents and grandparents, sons and daughters. Sometimes they are brought here hours after they almost died from an overdose. Sometimes they don't make it to court. Heroin and other opiates kill 1 American every 16 minutes. That's more than die in traffic crashes.
I'm trying 911. What is your go-to emergency? 4980 Glenway Avenue, Cofield Library. My children's librarian is asking for a document. She thinks that he may be overdosing. Hello?
Hello, Cincinnati 911.
Yes, please, sir. My brother and his friend overdosed.
Where's
In my car. I'm right around the real car. What's going on?
Stay greedy.
The electric lamp.
Just walked in, my buddy needs to answer his phone, and I believe the OD, and I think he's dead.
Can you tell me for sure if he has the pulse or the heartbeat?
He's ice fucking cold.
I got a phone call. She was all upset for. I couldn't understand her, and I said, "I think she's telling me my baby's dead." No, it's not real. No, I don't know. It feels like your soul leaves your body. It felt like somebody just blasted me in the chest with a shotgun. That's what it really felt like. I guess they see it so much, they just look at it like, well, there's another dumbass, whatever. That corner said, I deal with this every day. And they come, well, we deal with this every day. I said, yeah, well, I don't deal with this every day. I don't got to deal with it every day very much. Every day my child's dead. I don't deal with that every day. Well, how would you feel if you went on your child was dead? They didn't let me see him, so I didn't believe it. I said, nah, it ain't time. He hasn't been using, he's been clean for a year. He said, Mom, look, I promise you, I will never do heroin again. He said, Mom, that stuff they got every day. He said, it's not heroin. He said, it's intentionally made to kill you. So what happened to me? You want to do a shot of heroin again?
By the end of the night, at least 20 people in Greater Cincinnati have overdosed. 4 have died. In the early morning, Covington police raid a house for drugs and guns. It's a constant battle to keep up as demand for heroin rises. Heroin is big business, and cartels from Mexico want to cash in. They flood markets like Greater Cincinnati with drugs and rely on street dealers to find customers. Police go after those dealers, but if one goes down, another is always ready to step in.
There's an overdose right here by the church. You see a needle man? Yeah. That's usually what it is nowadays. You kill somebody laid in the alley. This is what it is now.
Heroin isn't just a big city problem. Small towns across Ohio and Kentucky have been devastated by the drug.
You know, when we started this ministry, we were so excited about just being able to do what God wants us to do. We didn't realize the magnitude of what we're faced with.
Darrell Breeden created Firehouse Ministries to do something about it. His church welcomes all, including anyone seeking help with addiction.
And when I hear him talk, it's like it's a demon that's got him. You know, that is something inside of them that's really evil, that's forcing them to do what they're doing. And a lot of these kids, you know, are faced with that same choice, and maybe sooner than later with the way things are. The kids that we help and that we minister to, there's not one of those kids that are not affected by the addiction problem. And heroin seems to be the greatest controlling factor. Somebody in their family is directly connected with the drug culture, and these kids are faced with that. And I've also seen some families where not only the parents are using, but they're using with their kids. And that is a really risky place for all of them to be. And I know for a lot of their lives, that just seems like a normal thing that, you know, my parent is using, my siblings are using, and it's an atmosphere that just creates a whole lot more trouble for them when they think that kind of lifestyle is normal.
Father, we just want to thank you for the blessings that you give us. We want to thank you for this day, Father, for these kids that come out. I just pray that you protect them and keep them safe. Draw them close to you, let them experience your love and your mercy. In Jesus' name. Amen.
By the end of the day, at least 38 people have overdosed for the week. 6 have died. As heroin addiction progresses, people can lose careers, family support, even their homes. Some end up here, under the city's interstates.
I started to hit the homeless camps pretty regularly. There was a lot of alcoholics and mentally ill individuals that weren't being medicated properly. Now it's mostly heroin.
It's Officer Tim Epstein's job to clear out these homeless camps, but he also tries to help.
These people are in a tough spot in their lives. Nobody really recognizes their rock bottom until it's pointed out to them. The goal isn't to take them to jail. The goal is to connect them to services. But sometimes I'll have to take people to jail. Each time you get a you have to change something. It's an opportunity to make the decision to make the big change, to actually get off the heroin or the other drugs in your home.
Kim Hill is preparing to see the son she lost Monday to a heroin overdose. Tom had been drug-free for about a year before relapsing. His friends found him in his apartment, a needle in his arm.
Just to see your child looking like that, and that had been doing this so long. I remember just laying on the chest saying, why did you do this? Why? Why would you do this? Come. You know, this 8-year-old had been kissing him. And I didn't want to let him go, and I didn't care how he looked. I just wanted to bring him home.
Crime labs like this one in Cold Spring are scrambling to keep up with demand. Evidence in every drug case ends up in a place like this, where it's tested, measured, analyzed.
You know, if they're really, really into it, this might not be enough for them for the day.
Heroin isn't the only problem. Synthetic opiates such as fentanyl and carfentanil are increasingly common and increasingly deadly.
So there's the fentanyl dose, like it's a speck of sand, and they say fentanyl's like a snowflake, and then heroin, and that's what's mixed into the weed that kind of went around last summer in Cincinnati with like a lot of the overdoses in weed.
Just a few crumbs are enough to kill. The idyllic suburb of Fort Thomas has had its share of heroin problems.
44, 43, I'll be home.
And the highways bring even more people with addiction through. Police created the heroin interdiction team after the drug was blamed for several deadly crashes in northern Kentucky. Drug driving is more common now than drunken driving. The right help can be hard to find for those addicted to heroin. Treatment centers fill up quickly, and programs that work for some addictions don't work well for heroin. The Campbell County Jail has a new approach. Women here get evidence-based treatment. They get medication when they leave jail. But that's not where it ends. For 2 years, they get health checks, job training, housing assistance. And Tara Jarvis deliberately got arrested so she could get treatment.
I completely shut down from everything from my iPads and my sisters from my program. It's not. I went this morning and we're not with that.
Cincinnati 911, what is the address of your emergency?
No, I'm in the parking lot of school, but it's like emergency. I think she overdosed. I don't know what she took.
I can remember waking up from being revived, and it was just literally like a fog, a dozen people standing around me. I had no idea who was who, and it was terrifying because it's almost like you're laying in a casket.
It took Amy Parker years to learn how to live without heroin. She relapsed more times than she can remember and alienated family and friends.
As long as a person is still alive, there is hope that they can get through this.
But she did it. She got treatment, including medicine. Now she's a peer counselor, helping people who are where she used to be, walking the line between sobriety and relapse.
I'm in a dream. Is it real? And when I look around at my beautiful home and a safe neighborhood with my husband and my kids, it's amazing.
By the end of the day, at least 63 people have overdosed for the week. 9 have died.
Well, we're at 9 Mile and 52.
Claremont County Sheriff's deputies are targeting heroin users on US 52. Pill mills along this route used to give drug users easy access to prescription painkillers. Now, those drug users come looking for heroin.
Since the heroin problem has just been the area that we've really had to target, and it just doesn't seem to be going away.
If you were at a beach, you could put your fingers down, say, pinch some sand, and that's literally the amount of heroin that typically a user would purchase.
They'll shove that stuff down in their sock. They'll put it in a real small balloon, shove it in their bottom of their shoe, underneath the pad of their foot.
You know, it's true of finding a needle in a haystack.
When deputies pull over this 23-year-old man, they find drug paraphernalia in the car. The man admits he uses heroin. He says he believes he's safe because he snorts heroin rather than injecting.
I just think that's a lot safer than just taking a needle now.
So you're not doing it every day?
Yeah, somewhat, yes.
Sometimes yes.
I don't know if that makes sense, but other times no.
But isn't it gonna eat the inside of his nose up?
What's that? Yeah, it could, especially if there's like chemicals in it. But I mean, people do the nose because you snort the cocaine, you got blood vessels or heroin right here, and it goes direct to the brain. So that's why they snort it. And then freebasing, you get into your veins and your bloodstream, so it's almost immediate. Whereas if you smoke it, it takes a while to get through your lungs and then into your blood and then up to your brain to feel it. So, yeah. You'll see, especially crystal meth with the teeth, they lose all their teeth with crystal meth. So and if you don't brush your teeth every single day, you're shooting up, you're just going to lose your teeth. It's just part of it.
When babies are born to mothers addicted to heroin, they can suffer tremors, seizures, and other withdrawal symptoms. Children's Hospital treats those babies and works with parents to keep them healthy.
Still need a little bit of holding on. You're getting there. There you go. Turn you on your belly and see what you can do.
Eliana, her needs gift from God.
Stephanie Gaffney says she used heroin for years until she learned she was pregnant with Eliana. She lives with her baby at a Cincinnati treatment center.
She gave me something a little bit more worth fighting for. I had a rough and complicated childhood. I don't want her to have to go through any of that I did. I want her to have her parents being consistent in her life.
She looks excellent. You started out so little and you're so big now. Yes, you are.
I don't know how possible it is, but I would like to have as normal a family as addicts can have.
10 days after this visit, Stephanie Gaffney overdosed and died. Eliana is now living with Stephanie's parents.
No one wakes up one day and says, this is what I want to do. We don't see them as what most people would see them as, which is prostitutes.
Scarlett Hudson calls them her girls, and these women call her Mama.
Yeah, so she'll be on the street tonight.
Through the Women of Alabaster Ministries, they can drop in for a meal, clothing, or health checks.
We look at them like they have been broken, they're hurt. We don't believe at all that it's a choice that they would make had they had a good choice to make. This is one way that they know that they can feed that addiction. They've resorted to this. We see them through the eyes of Christ. That's how we see them. We thank you for the days when girls say when they're sick and tired of being sick and tired. Hey baby, are you hungry? Oh, you want to go with me? I'm going out to the building. So are you? We know that if we keep doing what we've been called to do, that more and more of them will find their way out, and more of them will live. There's going to come a day when it's going to be your day, and you're going to come in and say, I'm ready, right? Yeah. They have aspirations, and if you had aspirations, we just got to find that person again. So when we look at them for what they can be one day, not what they are at the moment.
I'm currently at Burger King on Glenway, and there's somebody passed out in the women's bathroom.
Are they sure this is a ma'am, they're passed out. They were face down. Yes, the mule is right by her.
Most companies won't hire someone who's struggling with heroin addiction. Warsaw, Kentucky's largest employer, Dormant Products, takes a different approach.
We got two new people here. Moving on, what's your thing?
I've been struggling with heroin for the better part of the last 7 years.
Workers meet weekly on company time to talk about their struggles or the struggles of family members.
I've got 4 kids, both my sons are addicts, and they have put me through hell and then some, several times. A lot of people just want to look at you and say, there's nothing you can do, just, give it to God and forget about it. Well, that sounds good, but it doesn't work that way. Especially when it's your kid. Most of the time, it's an escape. You're hunting for the parts and you don't really have a lot of time to think. That's the hardest part, is putting your game face on and trying to pretend like you're okay. You know, in here, you don't have to do that. A lot of the guys that were in here will come up to me on the floor and ask me, how are your boys doing? Have you heard from Josh yet? And that means a lot, because a lot of people don't get it. You know, my last job with one of the cashiers, she was talking about heroin addicts one day, and she made a very nasty reference, and I was like, I'm gonna stop you right there. I have 2 sons, they're both heroin addicts. You're entitled to your opinion, but I cannot sit here and listen to you say nasty things that they all should die and all of that. You know, I pray that you're never in my situation, because only then are you gonna understand it. And I don't want you to learn that way. Every single addict out there is somebody's child.
By the end of the night, at least 123 people have overdosed for the week. 13 have died.
We had a woman overdose in our public restrooms.
Overdoses happen everywhere. This one is in the restroom at Finley Market. Someone finds a 35-year-old woman in a blue tank top and yoga pants sprawled on the floor. A syringe loaded with heroin is at her side. The life-saving drug Narcan reverses the effects of heroin. A worker at the market has it in her purse and uses it to revive the woman. Usually it's the police or paramedics who have to administer Narcan. This man passed out while sitting on a bench at Hyatt Park. A bike cop spotted him and called for paramedics. Now, the cop is shooting naloxone into the man's nostrils.
Always doesn't work for a long time.
When paramedics show up, they insert an IV and give him another naloxone dose. This time, the man rouses.
It's okay, buddy. Relax, you're good, okay? Stay still.
When he comes to, the medics tell him he should go to a hospital, or at least sit and drink some water. Instead, a friend helps him to his feet, and they walk away. By the end of the day, at least 123 people have overdosed for the week. 13 have died.
I think you got OD'd on heroin. I think you got it dead.
During moments for a family driving southbound on I-75 near the Wesley Hills Viaduct. That's where Cincinnati police arrested a man for ODI on heroin after a crash.
Heroin users cause crashes all the time. Sometimes they shut down major interstate. When this driver and passenger overdosed while headed south on I-75, paramedics saved their lives. Police charged the driver with driving while on heroin. More people died from overdoses in Butler County this week than in any other greater Cincinnati county. Butler County Sheriff Richard Jones won't let his deputies carry Narcan.
I'm a very compassionate person. I see more than they do. I cry a lot inside.
Jones is the only sheriff in Southwest Ohio whose department doesn't use it. His decision sparked a protest from those who say saving lives is what matters most, and a counter-protest from those who say heroin users shouldn't get free treatment, even to save their lives.
Kids are born in my jail. 3 babies born in 18 months, born addicted. 12 pregnant ladies in my jail and have 35 babies. One of them has 7. They don't have any of them. Children's Services has them. Narcan isn't the issue. The issue is the people that are dying and doing these drugs, and our politicians and our government does nothing. But I'm not apologizing for my stance, not even this much, and nor will
Brianna and Jackson are so freaking happy. They're the happiest kid. I don't understand how they can be so happy. I guess that's part of being a kid, right? You're always really happy.
Maureen Sheriff's front yard is a playground for her grandchildren. Brianna is 9 and Jackson is 4. Their mom, Natalie Bauer, overdosed and died in January. Maureen is raising Brianna, and her sister is raising Jackson. They consider themselves lucky to be able to care for the children. Kids of heroin users often end up in foster homes.
It is scary, raising a child without a parent. We don't know what to do.
We have to almost smother them with so that they understand that they're part of a family.
They do understand that it was an accident.
That she didn't leave on purpose.
People say it'll get better. It doesn't go away. It doesn't get better. I want Natalie back. Nothing more in this world that I want. I can't have her. Last night she was crying. I want mommy. I feel like my life is over. What does that mean when a 9-year-old says, I feel like my life is over? Brianna was saying last night, why did this have to happen to me? This is so unfair. I said, you're right, it is unfair. I don't know why this had to happen to me. They have to be so brave. If it took her life to bring theirs, then that's what her destiny was. Her life was worthwhile.
By the end of the night, at least 154 people have overdosed for the week. 13 have died.
It's amazing, guys. They just came running outside to get us, and she's breathing. Yes, she's not breathing, hon. Her name's Gracie. That's all I know. But my friend had 2 shots in our team. They're about to give her now. We gotta get her on the floor. Come on, guys. She's dead. She's purple.
Gracie. Wake up, Gracie. Gracie. Gracie.
Either she got a new dealer, the new dealer has her, or she's been off for a while and jumped back into the game.
Gracie. Gracie. There we go. Gracie. Watch yourself. Watch yourself. You don't have to be in your arm, okay? Gracie, you overdose. Okay, watch your step. Big step here. Okay. Let somebody give me some heroin while you sleep.
Yeah, they said they can give it intravenously, so they can put it in their IV. Narcan reverses the effect of opiates, and they can spray it because they'll get directly into your brain quickly. And sometimes if their heart stops, that's the hard part. They have to do it intravenously, then pump your heart for you. They do like that, and that kind of makes you breathe too. I think new CPR is just pushing on the rib cage so your lungs move and your heart moves to get the blood. It is crazy. There was a lot of times they'll show them at the end, like, all I was doing was drinking. I think that's what she'll say here. So it really is denial until you've hit rock bottom. Hopefully that's before you've died, because you can't get rehab after you're dead. Your family might be able to, but it's definitely, Narcan only works on opiates. So it's pretty clear what was in your system if Narcan worked on you.
Hey, was he right there for us, okay?
Drinking does that to you, usually not, but you can do both at the
If the
same time.
heroin epidemic is a battle, as many in law enforcement now see it, local jails are the overwhelmed field hospitals. Mass units where the casualties just keep coming.
The city see a big spike in heroin opioids. From what I understand is they've had more heroin related opioids than alcohol related opioids. They're easier to get to, because most of the time they catch them either with it in their arm or they hit Narcan to their back. And the only thing that Narcan works on is opiates.
When they beat them like do they give them any treatment or they just not?
Yes, they do. It's very tricky, but that's where the social work comes in. So one of my last research articles was on grandparents raising grandchildren. You saw 2 examples of that, I think. There was, the girl that died that they showed her saying, I'm never going to use again. She died a week later. Then there's the mom of 2 in Mount Lookout, which is a really rich part of Cincinnati, Ohio. It's like $500,000 home. So the grandparents raising them, they will go to Child Protective Services first, but ideally they want the kids with the family. So I worked at Claremont Recovery Center for 3 years, and we got court mandated. Almost everybody was court mandated, probably 80 to 90%. The thing that sucks about that is you can also choose to either go to jail or go to treatment. Most people choose treatment, but at some point in time, some people are just like, I'm not going to treatment. I'm just going to go to jail. You can make booze in jail. You can sneak drugs in jail. So it really just depends. But I like this because addiction covers every area of social work possible. And more than likely, 80% of the open jobs right now are addiction recovery. So you'll always have a job in addiction treatment, but it's also a very high burnout job. So you have to do good self-care and make sure to just, I only lasted a few years in it and then changed to working with families and children. But it's definitely, there's always a job there. So that's good to know if you have a social work license. Actually, with your associates, you can get in Ohio. How many of you are not from Ohio in the state of Ohio here? Just like a few of you. Okay. And then you're like Illinois, Indiana? Okay. So I think they have it too. It's called a CDCA, the Chemical Dependency Counselor Assistantship. With your first 2 years of college, it's an associate's degree. And you can get a license with your Chemical Dependency Counselor Assistantship. They probably clear $40,000 a year with like your first 2 years of college. Get a CDCA. If any of you are interested, I have the packet of how you fill out to get that. And you could probably get a job immediately once you have that too. There's a big need.
I'm dedicated every day to the rush of getting high. I'm sick of it. I'm sick of it. It's a trend, I guess, my trend system. It's really hard to get out. So I've been on OD and did about 7 or 8 separate times at a time, so, I probably have 20 odd ODs, I should buy all of them, probably be dead.
More than 200 inmates at the Hamilton County Justice Center are admitted heroin users. Jail officials believe the actual number is much larger. Heroin users typically don't stay here long. They get patched up and booked, but the jail is crowded. If they've committed no other crime, they are often released within days or hours. Many return again and again.
Thank you for stressing me out. I'm not asking you to pay $6,000. I'm asking you to be there.
Lizzie Hamlin's son, Scotty, has been missing for days. His friend, Tom Tom, died from a heroin overdose Monday.
It's an empty room.
Scotty disappeared after that. His mom is sure he's using again. Lizzie came home from work just minutes ago and could tell that he had returned to the apartment. He left with some of his things. She suspects he will sell them and use the money to buy heroin.
This is my room. I keep it locked. I keep my purse, my personal things in there. When Scotty's using, he tends to take things, leather jackets, brand new pants, trade them in, get money, and get high. We had our up and downs, but we had a lot of good times.
Respondent has track marks, has been making up to 5 trips a day to purchase. He's going to Cincinnati 5 times a day for drugs and sometimes cannot make it through the night without using any couldn't. Approximately 3 weeks ago, respondent was admitted to St. Edward Hospital voluntarily and reported feeling hopeless, helpless, and thoughts of suicide. The results in a 3-day stay was unable to stay sober longer than 6 days before relapsing.
Lizzie is going to Tom Tom's funeral tomorrow to support his mom, Kim Hill. But she'll also be thinking of her own son.
See, Kim's going through the process of her. She's having to plan this funeral. Me, I imagine in my mind, what would I put Scotty in? What kind of shirt would he want? What kind of hat would he want? What shoes? I just don't know. I don't know. I don't know the answer to any of it. If I could lock him to a bed with the chain, and I would. Scott, he just texted me back and said, love you too.
By the end of the week, at least 180 people have overdosed. 18 have died. This is normal now. This is a typical week.
We're here to pay our respects to Tom Tom. He had a big heart and he was all about family. Tom Tom was here today. He could say anything he wanted to us. He would say to those of you that are using heroin, please don't let this death be a thing.
So this is a recent video in Cincinnati, well-made, Midwest, what a lot of the Midwestern social workers are dealing with. Many of you know, I guess if you're in my HBSE class at 2 o'clock, we've had, like, our life expectancy has gone up every year for like almost, I think it was almost 50 years. And the past 2 years is the first years we've had lowered life expectancy. So men is like 70 some years and women live like 80 some years. Most of it is because the pandemic. So the pandemic is killing people younger, and especially the older ones, and the heroin overdoses. So we've had 2 years in a row where our life expectancy has gone down. And, you know, again, addiction doesn't affect any particular monetary class or community. It's race, religion, or anything. Like, drugs and addiction affect everyone. And so as a social worker that has dealt with it before, it is very rewarding work, but it's also very stressful because you don't get those like 80% stay sober. You might have, sometimes it's only 50%, sometimes it's even less than 50%. It can be a challenge. It can be you're working with their kids. It could be that you're working with the grandparents, like getting them into Al-Anon groups. Could be folks that are, you know, grandparents raising grandchildren. That was one of our most recent papers we had put out. Doing some research on this from Miami University. So we wrote, are the grandparents that are raising the grandchildren getting the services they need? And some of you guys may know grandparents that are raising grandchildren, and for whatever reason, it might be monetary, it might be drugs, alcohol, it could be incarceration. But our question really was just interviewing families and members, grandparents, keeping the children, because otherwise they do go to Child Protective Services and they don't have that family connection. Whenever you turn 18, even if you grew up in foster, you want to find the family you came from. You know, like, get curious. You're like, what are my genetics? That's why we do a genogram with a lot of the kids we work with in our social work agencies. So in review with Chapter 4, we talk about all the different folks given social service delivery And some of them are agencies or associations we mentioned. I feel like every one of these touches on kids with addiction, family addictions. They could be profit or not for profit. Sometimes you may go to private practice for aftercare. So you go to Alcoholics Anonymous in a private practice. A lot of the services, I think Ohio got 400 million and Kentucky got 500 million for heroin services to pay the social workers. So that's why I say there's a lot of jobs for addiction recovery and sobriety maintenance. Here's some of the referral stuff and how they get their funding. Some of the issues in funding is if like agencies privatize and they don't get federal government funding. We mentioned there's competition among agencies, and you do need to be licensed. So if it is a chemical dependency counselor or a licensed social worker, the first one you can get with 2 years of college, the second one you get with 4 years of college, and then your master's and independent license come after your 5th year of education. There are some paraprofessionals, volunteers. I'd say that covers some of the Alcoholics Anonymous. Volunteers do more of like the advocacy and policy making. The self-help groups like Alcoholics Anonymous, it's 25 million people participate in self-help groups. They're used both separate from and in addition to professional services. So a lot of social workers will refer you to AA. The format differs. So it's based on principles of empowerment and mutual aid. And then research and evidence supports effectiveness. And then delivery. So when you deliver services, it's client given, flexible, broad. I saw a few questions pop up here. So it says in the chat, is it common for children to be born with heroin addiction because of the parents? And can adults be assigned a social worker? So yes, adults can be given a social worker. It is common for children to be born with heroin because it runs through the baby's blood also. And social workers will work with them. And then the last one is, don't sometimes people face mental illness after overcoming drug abuse and going to rehab? And so, yes, sometimes it's mental illness that comes first. And it's called dual diagnosis. So again, the question is, do sometimes people face mental illness after overcoming drug abuse and going to rehab? That was the question from the chat. And it is dual diagnosis. And as a social worker, we work with them. You treat both the mental illness and the addiction. Suboxone is one of the new drugs they've used to get people off heroin. It used to be methadone, but the problem with methadone is you can overdose and abuse that too. Like you can drink too much. You can. I remember a client I had in 2009 saying my brother overdosed on methadone. I'm like, wait, what? Isn't that the drug that gets you off of heroin? He's like, yeah, but you can drink too much and overdose on methadone also. So that's why I came up with Suboxone and a few Subutex and a few other generic names. So you treat them with the addiction, and then with the mental health, you'll have mental health groups, and maybe it is like Prozac or other medication needed. It might just be Alcoholics Anonymous. They do the entirety of the 12 steps in addiction recovery, everything. So those are all the questions from the chat. Do you guys have questions on your? I know it's a lot to take in. I know sometimes you're like, all right, what's the damn assignment? Get me out the class. I'm done. I get it. I get it. And I wish we could give you guys, like, when CSWE gives us accreditation, they make sure we give you the 45 hours in class every week. Not every week, every semester, which is 6 hours. No, it's only 3 hours a week. Over 15 weeks, 45 a semester. Then usually the homework. So for me, it will just be a paper every 10 to 12 days and then a discussion, mainly because D2L sucks and we're all getting used to it. So I'm not putting a lot up on D2L. And if you miss something, do you all graduate in 2025? I'm trying to remember. 2024. Okay. So like I said, if you wanted to, there is, I've never seen that building open. I wonder if it's actually going to have the college shop open and sell things. It's open. So yeah, if you have questions, go ahead and email me. You could get a license after half of your college career. And that would really help you get an internship and a placement. So most addiction recovery places will pay you that like 20, 25 an hour. And it's good pay, high burnout if you don't do self-care. So you got to make sure to like do your self-care so you're not overwhelmed. Like that's a lot of overwhelming stuff. And you'll have a caseload of 20 of those dudes, like that dude that was in the jail, like just looking like, I've overdosed 20 times and I've died 5. Like those, they're hard clients to work with and not impossible, and they're hard to make a connection with because they've probably seen 10 social workers. But there's that one person that gets through to them. You might have an intervention, just like you might have the one teacher that like makes you say, hey, I want to do social work, or hey, I want to do, whatever it is with your career. Yeah, no more questions from here. So if you guys have any, just, remember that papers due next